You have carried something for a long time that many people around you could not understand. You knew what you saw. You felt what others refused to acknowledge. You questioned yourself because the voices around you kept saying, "You're imagining things. You're too sensitive. You're overthinking." But today something is changing. The truth is no longer hiding in the shadows. What was done in secret is beginning to stand in the light. The masks are falling, and the people who once doubted you are starting to see exactly what you saw from the beginning. I want you to hear this with your whole heart. You were never crazy. You were never weak. Your spirit simply recognized what many people were too distracted to notice. God gave you discernment, not to make your life harder, but to prepare you for moments exactly like this. While others judged by appearances, you learned to look deeper. While others were captivated by charming words, you paid attention to actions. That gift has protected you more times than you realize. Some of you have been hurt because you told the truth. You lost friendships. You lost opportunities. People called you difficult because you refused to participate in lies. They tried to isolate you, hoping that if enough people stood against you, you would finally surrender your conviction. But the Lord has been strengthening you every single day. Every tear you cried in private became another lesson in wisdom. Every lonely night became another step towards spiritual maturity. Now look around. Isn't it amazing how time reveals what arguments never could? You didn't have to expose anyone. You didn't have to fight every battle. Truth has a way of speaking for itself. The same people who defended deception are now questioning it. The same voices that mocked you are becoming silent. They are beginning to see the inconsistency, the manipulation, the empty promises, and the constant twisting of reality. The culprit is no longer hidden because lies cannot survive forever in the presence of light. Remember this: a liar may fool people for a season, but they cannot fool God. Every false word carries the seed of its own destruction. Eventually, contradictions appear. Eventually, character is revealed. Eventually, people begin connecting the pieces that once seemed unrelated. You don't have to celebrate someone's downfall. Instead, celebrate the victory of truth. Truth doesn't need revenge. Truth only needs time. Some of you have been asking God, "Why did you let me go through this?" The answer may be simpler than you think. Your faith was being refined. Your heart was being strengthened. Your dependence was shifting away from human approval and toward divine purpose. If everyone had believed you immediately, perhaps you would have depended more on people than on God. But because you walked through misunderstanding, you discovered a relationship with the Lord that no crowd could ever replace. Listen carefully. Do not become bitter now that people are finally seeing what happened. Bitterness will steal the very peace God has been building inside you. Forgiveness does not mean pretending the pain never happened. Forgiveness means refusing to let the wounds control your future. You are too valuable to carry resentment into the next chapter of your life. God is opening doors that require a healed heart, not a heavy one. The enemy wanted to convince you that your honesty would destroy you. Instead, your honesty became your foundation. Integrity may seem expensive in the moment, but deception always costs far more. You chose the narrow path when the easy road looked attractive. You chose honesty when silence would have been more comfortable. You chose faith when fear whispered louder. That is why your spirit remains strong today. Never confuse popularity with righteousness. Some of the loudest voices are not the wisest voices. Some of the most convincing smiles hide the deepest deception. But a heart connected to God learns to recognize peace even in confusing situations. That inner peace became your compass. It guided you when evidence was missing. It protected you when others questioned your motives. And now it is being confirmed before your eyes. I believe someone listening today has almost given up on trusting their own discernment. This is your reminder to trust the gift God placed within you. Continue praying before reacting. Continue listening before speaking. Continue walking in humility instead of pride. Discernment without love becomes judgment. But discernment, guided by God's love, becomes wisdom that blesses everyone around you. You are not here to prove people wrong. You are here to live so authentically that your life becomes undeniable evidence of God's faithfulness. Let your character speak louder than your critics. Let your consistency silence false accusations. Let your compassion remind people that strength and kindness can exist together. There will always be people who choose lies because lies are comfortable. Truth demands change, and not everyone is ready for that. But you are not responsible for everyone's response. You are only responsible for your obedience. Keep your hands clean. Keep your conscience clear. Keep your eyes fixed on the Lord. He sees every sacrifice that no one else applauds. Today is not just about someone else's mask falling. It is about your confidence rising. It is about your faith being restored. It is about your soul remembering who you truly are. You are not defined by the people who misunderstood you. You are defined by the one who created you with purpose before you ever took your first breath. So stand taller. Walk forward with peace. Stop apologizing for being honest. Stop shrinking your light to make dishonest people comfortable. The world does not need another person willing to compromise. It needs courageous souls who will stand with grace, humility, and unwavering truth. God has not forgotten your prayers. He has not ignored your pain. Every delay had a purpose. Every closed door carried protection. Every betrayal revealed who truly belonged in your life. And every moment of loneliness brought you closer to the voice that matters most, His voice. The season is changing. What was hidden is being uncovered. What was confusing is becoming clear. What was spoken against you is losing its power. The truth is rising, not because you forced it, but because light always overcomes darkness. So lift your head, chosen one. Your heart is healing. Your spirit is stronger. Your purpose is clearer than ever before. Walk into this new season without fear, without bitterness, and without regret. Let truth remain your language, faith remain your strength, and love remain your legacy. Those who have eyes to see will finally recognize the difference between deception and integrity. And when they do, they won't just see the liar for who they are, they will also see you for who God has always called you to be, a faithful soul, a courageous witness, and a light that could never be extinguished. For a long time you have carried a truth that no one else seemed willing to acknowledge. You tried to explain what you were seeing, but every conversation somehow turned back on you. Instead of listening, people questioned your motives. Instead of asking why you felt that way, they told you that you were imagining things. Some even laughed, as though your discernment was nothing more than fear or insecurity. There were moments when you sat alone, wondering if everyone else was right and you were the one who had misunderstood everything. But deep inside, there was a quiet voice that never stopped reminding you to stay alert. That voice was not fear. It was wisdom. It was the Spirit of God, gently warning you that appearances can be deceiving, and that not every smiling face carries honest intentions. Today, I want you to know that you were not walking through confusion without purpose. You were being prepared for the moment when the truth would finally rise above every lie. The hardest part about carrying the truth is that it often feels lonely before it becomes obvious. Most people believe what they can see with their eyes, but God teaches His chosen ones to pay attention to what their spirit senses. While everyone else was captivated by charming words, you noticed the inconsistencies. While others celebrated someone's image, you quietly observed their character. You saw patterns that others ignored. You noticed promises that were never kept, stories that constantly changed, and actions that never matched the beautiful speeches. Yet every time you tried to speak, your honesty was treated like a problem instead of a gift. That experience wounded your heart because you never wanted to be right about something painful. You wanted people to see the truth before they were hurt by it. But God sometimes allows people to learn through experience, because lessons discovered personally often leave the deepest impact. There is something powerful about God's timing that human beings often fail to understand. We become impatient because we want justice immediately. We want lies exposed the moment they are spoken. We want every false accusation corrected as soon as it is made. But heaven works on a different schedule. God is never late, even when it feels like he is silent. His silence is not permission for evil to win. His silence is preparation for a revelation that no one will be able to deny. You see, when God uncovers the truth, he does it so completely that even those who defended deception begin to question what they once believed. The evidence becomes impossible to ignore because the liar eventually reveals themselves through their own choices. A person can create a false image for a while, but maintaining deception requires constant effort. Every lie demands another lie to protect it. Every false story needs another false story to keep the illusion alive. Eventually, the weight becomes too heavy. Contradictions begin to appear. The mask starts slipping. The words lose their power because people notice that they no longer match reality. That is how truth works. It does not need to shout. It simply waits. It remains steady while deception slowly collapses under the pressure of its own dishonesty. This is why you must never become discouraged when lies seem louder than honesty. Noise may capture attention for a moment, but truth captures hearts forever. Perhaps someone listening today has been asking, "Lord, why didn't you expose them sooner?" That is an honest question. Maybe you watched your reputation suffer while someone else continued receiving praise. Maybe you were blamed for problems you did not create. Maybe people believed false stories about you without ever asking for your side. Those experiences leave scars that words cannot easily heal. But hear this clearly. God was never absent during those moments. He saw every tear that fell when no one else was watching. He heard every prayer whispered in the middle of the night. He understood the frustration you could not explain to anyone because you knew they would not believe you. The Lord was not ignoring your pain. He was strengthening your faith while preparing the perfect moment for truth to shine. Sometimes we believe that exposing a liar is the greatest victory, but that is not what God desires most. His greatest victory is transforming your heart while everything around you feels unfair. Anyone can remain kind when life is easy. Anyone can speak peacefully when everyone agrees with them. But maintaining love, integrity, and faith while being misunderstood is the mark of spiritual maturity. That is what God has been developing inside you. While the liar was busy protecting an image, God was busy building your character. While they invested energy into appearances, God invested in your soul. Character lasts far longer than reputation, because reputation depends on what people think, while character depends on who you truly are. Do not underestimate the power of staying silent when God tells you to remain silent. Many battles are won without arguments. Many victories happen without public announcements. You wanted to defend yourself, and perhaps there were moments when you almost did. Yet somehow, God kept telling you to wait. Waiting felt painful because silence is often misunderstood as weakness. But your silence allowed heaven to work in ways your words never could. Had you fought every accusation, people might have thought you were simply trying to protect yourself. Instead, God allowed time to become your witness. He allowed actions to reveal what arguments never could. That is why the truth now carries greater authority than it would have if you had forced it. You may notice something remarkable happening around you now. The same people who once dismissed your concerns are beginning to ask questions. They are noticing the same behavior you noticed long ago. They are seeing the same inconsistencies. Suddenly, conversations sound different. The confidence people once had in deception is fading because reality has become impossible to ignore. This is not because you convinced them. It is because truth has a power that human persuasion can never match. God is opening their eyes in His perfect time. As this season unfolds, guard your heart carefully. When the truth comes out, there is a temptation to say, "I told you so." There is a temptation to celebrate because you were proven right. But remember who you are. You are chosen not because you always know the truth, but because you reflect the heart of God. God never delights in destruction. He delights in restoration. Even those who have lived dishonestly are still souls who need repentance. Let your response be filled with humility instead of pride. Pray for wisdom instead of revenge. Pray that everyone involved finds healing, because the purpose of truth is not merely to expose darkness, but to lead people into the light. The greatest lesson you can carry from this season is that you never have to fear the truth. If your life is built on honesty, truth will always become your greatest ally. You never need to manipulate circumstances, force outcomes, or create false narratives. Simply continue walking faithfully, loving sincerely, and trusting completely. God has already gone before you. What was hidden is being revealed. What was distorted is becoming clear. What once seemed impossible to explain is now obvious for everyone to see. And as the truth continues to rise, let it also remind you that the God who protected your spirit through every painful moment will continue to guide your steps into a future where no lie can overshadow the light He has placed within you. There was a reason you sensed something long before everyone else did, and it wasn't because you were suspicious or negative. It was because God placed a unique sensitivity within your spirit. While others relied only on what they could see with their natural eyes, you were learning to recognize what could only be understood through spiritual discernment. That gift did not always feel like a blessing. In fact, there were seasons when it felt more like a burden. You noticed shifts in people's behavior before anyone else. You sensed hidden motives behind kind words. You could feel when peace quietly left a room, even though everyone around you acted as if everything was perfectly fine. There were moments when you wished you could simply ignore those feelings and live as carefree as everyone else seemed to. But God had set you apart for a greater purpose. He was teaching you to trust His voice above the opinions of the crowd. He was preparing you to walk through life with wisdom instead of illusion. And that preparation became one of the greatest forms of protection you would ever receive. Many people misunderstand discernment because they confuse it with judgment. Discernment is not about believing the worst in others. It is not about constantly searching for flaws or expecting betrayal around every corner. True discernment is the quiet ability to recognize what aligns with truth and what does not. It is the gentle whisper that tells you to slow down when everyone else is rushing ahead. It is the peace that leaves your heart when something appears right on the outside, but is deeply wrong on the inside. God never gives discernment to fill your heart with fear. He gives it to fill your life with protection. Every warning your spirit received was an expression of His love. Every uneasy feeling that kept you from making the wrong decision was evidence that heaven was watching over you, even when you could not understand why certain doors refused to open. Think back to the opportunities that disappeared from your life. At the time, they probably felt like heartbreaking losses. Maybe it was a friendship that suddenly ended without explanation. Maybe it was a relationship you desperately wanted to work. Maybe it was a business opportunity, a partnership, or a position that slipped through your fingers just when you thought everything was finally coming together. You questioned God. You wondered why He would allow something that looked so promising to fall apart. But now, with the wisdom that comes from distance, you can begin to see what you couldn't see then. Some doors were never meant to remain open because danger was standing behind them. Some people entered your life only to teach you a lesson, not to become part of your future. God protected you by allowing disappointment today so you could avoid devastation tomorrow. Protection does not always feel comfortable. Sometimes it feels like rejection. Sometimes it feels like delay. Sometimes it feels like unanswered prayers. But what if those moments that broke your heart were actually moments that saved your life? What if the conversation that ended unexpectedly kept you from years of manipulation? What if the opportunity you lost would have taken you away from your true purpose? We often ask God to bless us, but we rarely thank Him for the things He quietly prevented. We celebrate open doors, yet we forget that closed doors can also be miracles. Every time God interrupted your plans, He was proving that His vision extended far beyond what your eyes could see. His protection reached into places your understanding could never reach. There were people who laughed at your caution. They called you overly sensitive. They accused you of reading too much into situations. They told you to stop thinking so deeply and just trust what was happening on the surface. Their words made you question yourself. There were nights when you wondered if perhaps you really were imagining everything. You prayed for clarity because you didn't want to live in doubt. Yet even while you struggled, God continued strengthening the discernment He had placed within you. He did not remove the gift simply because others failed to understand it. Instead, He taught you to become more confident in listening to Him than in seeking approval from people. That lesson changed everything, because once you begin trusting God's direction, human opinions lose the power to control your decisions. One of the greatest challenges for chosen people is learning to obey before there is visible evidence. The world says, believe it when you see it. But God often says, trust me before you see it. That requires faith. It requires courage to step away from people who appear trustworthy, while everyone else continues following them. It requires strength to remain silent when your spirit tells you something is wrong, even though you cannot yet explain why. It requires patience to wait for God to reveal what only He can expose. These moments are not easy. They stretch your faith in ways that comfort never could. Yet every time you obey that quiet prompting from the Holy Spirit, you strengthen your spiritual foundation. You become less dependent on circumstances and more dependent on God's wisdom. Do not underestimate the value of the peace that God gives you. Peace is often one of His clearest forms of guidance. When something steals your peace repeatedly, pay attention. When your heart remains restless despite every logical reason to move forward, pause before making your next decision. God is not the author of confusion. He leads His children with clarity, even if that clarity comes one step at a time. Discernment is often quiet. It does not scream. It gently invites you to seek God before making choices that could shape your future. The world rewards impulsive decisions, but heaven honors patient obedience. Some of you have spent years apologizing for the very gift God intended to use. You apologized for asking questions. You apologized for noticing inconsistencies. You apologized because people made you feel guilty for refusing to ignore obvious warning signs. But today, I want to encourage you to stop apologizing for walking in wisdom. There is a difference between living in fear and living with discernment. Fear paralyzes you. Discernment prepares you. Fear isolates you from everyone. Discernment simply teaches you to choose relationships carefully. Fear expects evil everywhere. Discernment quietly recognizes where God's peace is present and where it is absent. One comes from anxiety, the other comes from the Holy Spirit. You may still wonder why God allows chosen people to carry this gift if it often leads to misunderstanding. The answer is because your calling is greater than your comfort. God is preparing you to influence lives, encourage broken hearts, and lead others toward truth. Before you can help someone else recognize deception, you must first learn how to recognize it yourself. Before you can become a source of wisdom for others, you must experience seasons where wisdom costs you popularity. Those painful experiences are not punishment, they are preparation. Every disappointment refined your spiritual eyesight. Every betrayal deepened your compassion. Every lonely season taught you that God's presence is enough when human support disappears. As you continue moving forward, remember that discernment should always walk hand in hand with humility. Never allow your ability to recognize truth to become a reason for pride. The same God who reveals hidden things also calls you to love those who are still learning. Not everyone grows at the same pace. Not everyone recognizes deception immediately. Some people need time. Some need experience. Some need grace. Your role is not to condemn them for seeing later than you did. Your role is to remain patient, prayerful, and compassionate while God completes His work in their hearts. The beautiful thing about God's protection is that you often understand it only after the storm has passed. You look back and suddenly realize that every delay had purpose. Every disappointment carried hidden mercy. Every unanswered prayer contained unseen protection. Every moment when your spirit urged you to walk away was actually God's hand gently leading you toward a future that aligned with His perfect plan. Today, stand with confidence, not because you know everything, but because you know the one who does. Trust the gift He has placed within you. Continue seeking His voice above every other voice. Continue choosing wisdom over popularity, truth over comfort, and obedience over approval. The God who protected you yesterday is still protecting you today, and He will continue guiding every step of your journey. What once felt like an unbearable burden will become one of the greatest testimonies of your life, because you will one day look back and realize that your discernment was never meant to make you fearful. It was God's loving hand keeping you safe, leading you away from destruction and directing you toward the extraordinary purpose He prepared for you long before you ever knew the path existed. There comes a moment in every chosen person's journey when they stop asking, "When will everyone finally believe me?" and begin asking, "Lord, how can I remain faithful while I wait?" That question changes everything, because it shifts your focus away from seeking validation from people and toward receiving approval from God. For so long, you may have believed that your peace depended on being understood, but the Lord has been teaching you a deeper lesson. True peace is not found in proving yourself right. It is found in knowing that God already knows the truth. Human opinions rise and fall like the wind, but God's judgment never changes. He sees every hidden sacrifice, every silent prayer, every moment you chose integrity when dishonesty seemed easier. Even when no one applauded your faithfulness, heaven recorded every act of obedience. That is why your vindication does not depend on winning arguments or exposing those who wronged you. It depends on trusting God's perfect timing, because what He establishes can never be undone. Many people believe that vindication means watching those who hurt them suffer. They imagine that justice only arrives when the person who lied, manipulated, or betrayed them experiences public humiliation. But God's way is far greater than human revenge. His desire is not merely to expose darkness, but to elevate those who remained faithful in the middle of it. Your greatest victory will never be someone else's downfall. Your greatest victory is becoming the person God created you to be, despite everything you endured. Think about that for a moment. The enemy wanted bitterness to become your identity, but God chose peace. The enemy wanted betrayal to make you distrust everyone, but God taught you wisdom without hardening your heart. The enemy wanted rejection to destroy your confidence, but God used it to strengthen your dependence on Him. That is true vindication. It is the transformation of your soul while the world is still trying to understand your story. There were countless moments when you wanted to defend yourself. You wanted to explain every misunderstanding, answer every false accusation, and correct every lie that was spoken about you. You replayed conversations in your mind, imagining what you could have said differently. You wondered if one more explanation would finally convince people of the truth. But God kept reminding you that not every battle deserves your voice. Some battles belong entirely to Him. There are situations where speaking more only creates more confusion, while silence allows truth to reveal itself naturally. It takes tremendous faith to remain silent when your reputation is being questioned. It takes incredible strength to trust God while your name is being misunderstood. Yet every moment you surrendered your desire to control the outcome, you made room for God to work in ways that no human effort could accomplish. Time has a remarkable way of exposing what emotions try to hide. People can pretend for a while, they can maintain appearances, tell convincing stories, and wear impressive masks. But eventually, character always speaks louder than performance. The person who lives dishonestly cannot hide forever, because truth has a way of surfacing through repeated actions. In the same way, your consistency becomes impossible to ignore. Day after day, year after year, you continue walking with integrity. You continue choosing honesty, even when dishonesty would have benefited you. You continue showing kindness, even after being hurt. You continue praying, even when answers seem delayed. That consistency becomes your testimony. While others are busy creating images, you are building character, and character always outlasts image. Perhaps today you feel tired of waiting. Maybe you have been faithful for years, yet it seems as though nothing has changed. Maybe you look around and wonder why dishonest people appear to succeed while sincere people continue struggling. That question has challenged believers throughout history, but never mistake temporary success for lasting victory. A tree may appear healthy because of its leaves, yet if its roots are diseased, it cannot survive forever. In the same way, a life built on deception may impress people for a season, but it cannot withstand the storms that eventually come. Your life, however, has been rooted in truth. Every challenge has driven your roots deeper into God's presence. Every disappointment has taught you greater dependence on His promises. That foundation is what will sustain you when circumstances change. One of the greatest temptations during seasons of waiting is becoming impatient. We want God to move according to our schedule. We want immediate justice, because delayed justice often feels like no justice at all. But God sees what we cannot. He knows every heart involved. He understands the timing that will bring the greatest glory to His name. Sometimes He delays your vindication because He is still giving others an opportunity to repent. Sometimes He waits because He is developing qualities within you that could never grow without patience. Sometimes He allows the process to continue because the testimony will be far more powerful when everyone can clearly see that only God could have brought such an outcome. Never confuse God's patience with His absence. He is always working, even when His hands remain unseen. As you move into this next season of your life, guard your heart carefully. Do not allow pride to enter once people begin recognizing the truth. There may come a day when those who doubted you apologize. There may come a day when those who ignored your warnings finally admit that you were right. Receive those moments with humility. Do not use your vindication as an opportunity to embarrass others. Remember how painful it was when people refused to listen to you. Let that memory make you compassionate rather than arrogant. Chosen people are not called to say, "I told you so." They are called to reflect the mercy that God has shown them. Forgiveness will become one of your greatest strengths in this season. Forgiveness does not excuse what happened. It does not pretend that betrayal was acceptable or that lies were harmless. Forgiveness simply means refusing to let someone else's actions determine the direction of your future. When you forgive, you release the burden that was never meant for you to carry. You stop allowing yesterday's wounds to control tomorrow's opportunities. God cannot fill hands that are tightly holding on to resentment. He wants to place new blessings, new relationships, new assignments, and new joy into your life. But those gifts require open hands and an open heart. Never underestimate the power of living with integrity. In a world where many people compromise for temporary gain, integrity shines like a light in the darkness. It may not bring instant rewards, but it creates lasting influence. People eventually learn who can be trusted. They learn whose words match their actions. They recognize the difference between those who seek attention and those who quietly serve with sincerity. Your integrity becomes your reputation long before anyone speaks on your behalf. It follows you into rooms where your name has already been mentioned. It opens doors that talent alone could never unlock, because trustworthy character is one of the rarest treasures in this world. There is also something beautiful about realizing that you no longer need everyone to understand your journey. In the beginning, misunderstanding wounded you deeply because you wanted people to know your heart. But now you have matured. You understand that not everyone is assigned to understand your path. Some people only see the chapter they entered, while God has been reading your entire story from the beginning. He knows every battle you fought in secret. He knows every temptation you resisted when no one was watching. He knows every sacrifice you made for the sake of obedience. That knowledge is enough. When you truly believe that God sees you, the need for constant human recognition begins to disappear. So keep walking forward with confidence. Continue choosing truth, even when lies seem louder. Continue serving with humility, even when pride appears more rewarding. Continue loving with wisdom, even after experiencing betrayal. Continue praying even when answers seem delayed. The God who has carried you this far has no intention of abandoning you now. He is writing a testimony that will inspire people who have almost lost hope. Your life is becoming living proof that honesty is never wasted, that faithfulness is never forgotten, and that God's timing is always perfect. One day you will look back on this difficult season with gratitude instead of pain. You will realize that every delay strengthened your character. Every trial deepened your faith. Every false accusation taught you to depend more fully on God. Every moment of waiting prepared you for a purpose greater than anything you could have imagined. And when your season of vindication is fully revealed, people will not simply admire your success. They will recognize the unmistakable hand of God upon your life. They will see that you did not climb by manipulating others, but by remaining faithful. They will understand that your peace was never built on public approval, but on God's unwavering presence. That will be your greatest testimony, not that you proved everyone wrong, but that you trusted God long enough for Him to prove Himself faithful.